Hi there, this is Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez, and this is the Design Your Physician Life podcast brought to you by our Max Salary Mastermind, a personal and professional development program for physicians who want to learn entrepreneurship. This week, we have Dr. Adam Carewe talking to us about letting doctors be doctors through AI. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Design Your Physician Life podcast, where you will get excited about being a physician, learn the tools that can help boost your success, and great tips from successful doctors. Join us to unlock the keys to an amazing physician life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez.
Hi, guys. Welcome to this episode of Design Your Physician Life podcast. I'm very excited today. We have Dr. Adam Carewe here in the house, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here today.
So Adam is a visionary leader and digital-first forward-thinking physician who has risen through the ranks by optimizing people, process, and technology. He's a family physician and double board certified in family medicine and clinical informatics, and still practices medicine via telehealth 40% of the time. Adam is a unique CMIO in that he's a large systems thinker, thought leader, always thinking bigger than what it is in the short to medium term. He's passionate about the future of healthcare and particularly the way of coming technology, that technology that we want all to listen about, and that will lead to better quality, predictability, and precision within the field of medicine. So thank you for being here once again.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So tell us, one of the things that we first start, and, you're still practicing medicine. So I haven't met anybody yet who's come here to our podcast who is not passionate about being a doctor and what that has done for other people's life and their lives. And so let's start with that area of your life. Who decided to be a doctor? Was it like little Adam, young Adam? Which Adam decided to become a doctor?
No, it's an interesting story. I actually graduated college. I played basketball in college, and I was thinking I was going to be a teacher. That was what I initially went to college for. I thought I'd be either a math or a physical education teacher. And as college evolved, I settled into the exercise sciences, and I really liked that, like learning about, the body and how you can train yourself and how you can evaluate people's performance and physiology. And so that actually led me to go to graduate school. I moved to San Diego and went to San Diego State for their program in exercise physiology. And I mean, literally up to this point, never actually crossed my mind to be a physician. There wasn't any physicians in my family. Obviously, I adored my physicians growing up. My pediatrician I had for 18 plus years. I think he saw me when I was a baby, and then he saw me, when I was an athlete in college for my routine check before school started. But, in San Diego, I started to get a little more interested in kind of the clinical side of exercise physiology. So, specifically working in cardiac rehabilitation. And so I did an internship that first summer after my first year of the master's program. And it was my mentor there. She was an exercise physiologist, and she sat me down and she just kind of gave me a little bit of perspective on that field. And, I was young and thinking, oh, this is going to be great. I love working with these patients and, rounding in the hospital at the bedside and giving them this education. And she just said, have you ever thought about being a nurse practitioner or a PA or even a physician? And it was honestly at that time, that's when I realized, man, I should be a physician. I can do all these other things and potentially more. So I pivoted at that point, literally as, I don't know, how old was I? Probably like 21, 22. And I had to go back and take organic chemistry and a couple of physics classes that, weren't a part of my undergrad. So I was this graduate student taking, freshman level and sophomore level classes and very serious about it. But that's actually what got me interested and what pivoted me to pursue medicine.
And that's wonderful because, we've heard quite a few stories where most physicians have chosen by high school, they have chosen what they're going to do. But there's also this other set of physicians that maybe they call like, maybe not the conventional applicant, right? That they
Hmm.
choose a different journey. And here you are not only doing that and then doing family medicine. So you start with exercise medicine. And I was thinking, oh, this story is probably going to take us to being a physiatrist or something like that, an
Hmm.
orthopedic surgeon. And then you
Hmm.
chose family medicine. Why did you choose that?
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting because when I was in cardiac rehab and when I kind of made that decision that summer, I actually was like, oh, I want to be a cardiologist, or maybe even a cardiothoracic surgeon. I mean, I got to see, open heart surgery as part of that. That was the first time I ever got to scrub into anything and kind of not participate, but watch. And, and so I was like, oh man, there's like this whole field of cardiology. And I really loved like electrophysiology. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll be an electrophysiologist, for cardiology. And and then when I got into medical school, it was kind of like the wake up call, the reality of like, oh my gosh, I have to learn a lot of stuff. And I think, for me, I'm much more of like a practical learner, which I think a lot of physicians, relate to that. But, I mean, I always did well in school. Obviously, all of us that get into medicine have to reach that bar. But I'll be honest, I kind of struggled the first 2 years of med school, like not in the sense of, I still got good grades, but it was very hard, like it is for many of us. But so at that point, I was like, you kind of are evaluating what you want to do as a physician. And I did, I kind of just explored all sorts of different clubs, that were available at my medical school. And I joined the orthopedic club because I was like, okay, I like this, or at least I like the concept of it. I joined the cardiology club. But then I honestly, it's funny. I didn't have a family physician growing up. We had a pediatrician, and I grew up in Northern California, which, looking back now, I remember seeing signs in my hometown of Petaluma, like for family physicians. But I don't know, for some reason, we never went to one. My mom didn't go to one, my dad, my step parents. Um, and so I went to like the family medicine club meeting to kind of find out about it. And it it's kind of embarrassing a bit to say this, but it was the first time I learned about family medicine and that there was like this generalized doctor that, could see and take care of the whole spectrum of care. So that in medical school, I guess it was probably in maybe early in the second year was when I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to be a surgeon. I'd much rather be kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none. I kind of went with that mantra, and that's why I settled on as a family physician.
That tells a little bit about experience because in your experience, you had never known what a family medicine physician was, yet you
Hmm.
knew what an electrophysiologist was, which many people don't find out even after they graduate medicine, what that is. So it's just experience what you were exposed to. So nothing to be embarrassed about, but it would
Totally.
be, yes, way more common to know what a family physician was than an electrocardiologist, electrophysiologist. That's fun.
Yep.
So tell us now, we're gonna get into the what brings us here today, which
Sure.
is advancing into this era of artificial intelligence. Tell us what your story was there that eventually, you found this area, because nothing that you have told me from your earlier years has told me anything about technology yet.
Yeah, I left that part out. So yeah, I mean, going back when I was, a teenager. I mean, I graduated high school in '95, so you can do the math of how old I am. But that was the era of like really when the internet started. And, like when I went to college, you know, we didn't have like the I call it it's so funny to call it the colored internet. Like we didn't have an internet that actually was like the way it is now in our dorm rooms. We had this like text-based World Wide Web that we could actually surf on. But in the computer labs, it was like the full, Ethernet computers. And, once I saw that and I started seeing websites, I was like, man, this is like very cool. Like, I want to learn how to do this. And so, in college, I took as an elective, a basic web design class. And at that time, it was like the code of HTML. There wasn't many of the editors out there now, like where you can, whip out a Substack page or a WordPress page today. But it was like, I think all throughout my life, I've always loved technology. And my grandfather was probably the inspiration for that. But, I think that was the catalyst that started it. And so, like on my basketball team in college, I, I was like the guy that got the digital camera before anybody else did. I remember the first one I bought at Costco, and it came with like this little printer, and, the pictures were okay. I mean, on a screen, they were still very small, but I would make websites, after each of our basketball road trips, and I'd take pictures along the way, and then I'd post them, and then I'd send it out to my team. And, it sounds so silly now talking about that, but, back in the day, that was pretty fringe, the kind of early adopter of the way we share photos now. So that was like the bug that actually kind of, catalyzed it. So I had a web design business shortly after that. I did that while I was in San Diego in grad school, and kind of continued that, like graphical design and those things. So that technology kind of was like always this thing that can't like circled back, throughout college, graduate school, medical school, and then ultimately my physician career after residency. So it's funny. It's like I didn't seek out this path to like be, chief medical information officer, but it was a natural kind of spot where I just kind of settled into as time went on, because of my interest in helping primarily physicians, but the whole care team, to be able to work as proficient and efficient as possible, so it will lead to better patient care.
A very interesting thing is listening to these stories is that we all have some of that started very early on, that then brings us to these areas. In my case, I was, I loved programming, and I was a C++ and Pascal programmer in college. And I also was a teacher's assistant for one of the professors in college for that. So it was all fun. And then I graduated a little bit earlier than you did, a few years earlier. And I was there. And one summer, I remember being in the MIT lab when we were just, oh my goodness, the email. It was the email that we had seen happening for the first time. And it was all exciting. And then going in through life, and then finally being able to integrate those passions of us, that interest for technology that you've had as a young man, and then now being able to do that later in your career is amazing. We don't know how life happens, and now you have the opportunity to do this. So how did you become a CMIO?
Yeah, I mean, so when I first started working in the health system that I've actually worked in my entire life, my entire professional life, which is Kaiser Permanente in Colorado, I joined right out of residency. And, I think so pretty early on, I had my own practice. I worked 4 days a week. I had Wednesdays off. We just had our first baby. So, Wednesdays I got to hang out at home with my daughter. My wife's a physician too. So we were busy, but, building our life, and our system was updating the platform that we were going to use for reimbursement for like medical education expenses. So, our previous system was a piece of paper that you would like jot down the conferences you went to, and, your airline tickets that you spent and how much it was. You'd attach receipts, and then you'd either fax it or mail it in our office, to the person who would process this and get us reimbursed. Well, we went to, an enterprise platform, an Oracle product, like it's called OneLink, which I think is pretty common these days. But, it was like this digital way to do reimbursement. And they announced this. And again, I was like there for probably like 6 months at this point. And they said, physicians, you're going to have to do it this way. And this is how you do it. It was like this one pager. And I opened up this PDF, and it was so confusing. I was like, if it's confusing to me, there's no way like our physicians in our medical group of, I think at that time it was about 1,000 physicians. I was like, there's no way that people are going to be able to do this. Like they're going to lose their, what, when they see this. And it kind of like went with the mantra of like what happened with the EHR and, technology and medicine. It was like just more stuff kind of like fell on our plate, and some of it was appropriate, but like this one, I was like, man, this has to be easier. So Anyway, long-winded way of saying this was like my first job aid that I created, for our physicians. And I just took screenshots of the steps of this process, and I made this like very simple step-by-step of how to get reimbursed. And being naive, I just sent it out to the entire med group, which was, it was like a send all. I was like, oh, they use this email. Oh, I have access to that. Send. And, some people replied back and were like, who is this Adam guy like sending this email? But people were like, whoa, this is super helpful. And I share that story because that is actually, I think, the reason why I got into this, because someone noticed it. Later on, someone said, hey, we have some positions opening up for some retiring physicians who have helped out with our EMR in the development of it and kind of the optimization. And, we think that you'd be great for that role. So again, no official credibility yet. There was no board certification in clinical informatics, or it was a very academic specialty, I think, at that time, but that's how I got started and got in there and eventually, developed a few programs that I felt were really passionate and needed for physician training and optimization. And, ultimately it led to landing in the role of CMIO. So I was never kind of like gunning for that position. And frankly, I always thought I would not want to be that position because I was worried I would get too disconnected, from the front lines. But as you introduced me, our medical group has basically a mandate that even our president and CEO of our medical group, he's a physician and he still practices, a portion of his time. So I've enjoyed that aspect of it because I get to use the stuff that, I'm helping to make better for everyone.
So I see how they made a call for retiring physicians. Were you consider yourself a retiring physician at that time?
Well, I guess ask me that. Tell me what you mean by that.
Because when you say that they made a call, we have these positions for retiring physicians who are on the way to retirement. Were you were you considering yourself a retiring physician at that time when they made that call?
No. This was just
I'm like, when was this? Like, no, it's not possible.
No. This was just these were a couple of the physicians that were on that existing team that they were just reaching their retirement. And so there was going to be some kind of openings. Yeah, no. So I was definitely, when I got hired, I was definitely at that time, I was definitely the youngest on
That's what I would have guessed. Yeah. So right now you are just talking about how applying things from the past. When you talk about taking these pictures on your basketball trips and then putting them together on a website, that's what you did. You took pictures of a process and videos of a process and then send that email, which I think is, it's the email that made your career basically, but your career was already in the works when you were doing those pictures for the basketball team.
Yep. No, totally. Yeah. It's that concept, I think, of there's all those like little stories, throughout that ultimately kind of end up shaping you. And, when you reflect back on it, you realize all those things, and now at this point, it's like, it allows you, I think, to think about the future now and like kind of this like wave of artificial intelligence that's everywhere in our life and, is coming fast and furious, into healthcare too. And I think, there's going to be some really exciting things in the future.
Well, you're definitely in one of the most important medical groups in this country right now. It's great influence for the way medicine is being practiced all over, and the way that you've been able to participate from a time where there was no certification, as you say, on this certification that you hold now, so you can do the work that you have at Kaiser. How do you see newer physicians being able to participate in this? Not only the ones that are in your company, but maybe even outside of your company, and not only using generative AI, which is what the huge wave is being talked about. How do you see that integration? Which places do you see physicians? Now that you've seen this whole transition that you've had in your career, and now that we have access to all these newer artificial intelligence spaces that we have right now.
Yeah. No, it's a really good question. And, I really try to always like, even though I'm in like obviously a very large health system, I always try and keep pulse with, the, the private practice physician, or, someone that's in a small group, or, maybe someone that's entered, direct primary care or even concierge, as well as other specialties. And I think, like the first part of your question, I think, people that are interested in this, by far, I think the best way to connect is to like start connecting with people that are, posting these types of ideas or sharing these types of blogs or podcasts. I think the medium of LinkedIn, I don't have any affiliation with LinkedIn specifically or Microsoft, but I just think that platform is really powerful for making connections, specifically in like this group of, kind of physicians that are interested in technology. That's, it's the reason why my good friend Dale Gold and I, several years ago, we kind of like created this Nerd MDs brand. And it was, again, kind of going back to my roots of like digital, interest in like kind of, art and digital art and making logos. And so we kind of like, we're like, well, let's like create this brand around Nerd MDs. We don't know what it will actually be, but like the ethos of it was like, it would be kind of those like-minded people, that, and, it's called Nerd MDs, but it's not like meant really to be exclusive, to even physicians and specifically MDs. I have a few DO friends that they don't particularly like the name, but it had a good ring to it and the URL was available. So honestly, that's why we actually chose that name. But, I think that's the way that people can start to get involved, is like find those thought leaders out there. I mean, it's what I've done for years. And then finally, I kind of was like, oh, I want to start like throwing out my ideas. And that's probably how you actually found me, I assume. But I think that's the way you start listening.
LinkedIn,
yeah.
It was.
Yeah. So I think you just kind of, you start finding people, you follow them or make friends with them, make a connection, offer a conversation. I mean, I've had young physicians reach out to me and just say, hey, would you be willing to chat with me for 30 minutes? I'm like super interested in this. And so I think the biggest thing, I guess my biggest advice would be like, number one, be curious about it. And if you're curious about it, like follow that curiosity and find other people that are kind of like-minded. There's so many conferences now too. I mean, there's the mega ones like HIMSS, which, to be honest, I think if you go to that the first time, you're going to be so overwhelmed. I went last year actually for the first time, and it was overwhelming even for me. But there's lots of even smaller ones that you could, go to or attend. You're going to meet people. And I think that full spectrum is available out there to like your specific question. And I think there's lots of ways to kind of get connected and be a part of this.
I right now cannot imagine any physicians who are practicing who are going to be successful somehow in the next 5-10 years without getting involved in some way, shape, or form. Either like you're at least a user of artificial intelligence, or you get involved in an area where you can contribute in a larger way. So let's move out the users of technology, especially as we said, generative AI. Can you tell me which, like maybe 3, 4, 5 areas that you see physicians being needed in development of artificial intelligence, or in other ways, like talking about it or going in to the government and different things? Which areas do you see that physicians are really needed right now that should be getting involved?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like kind of at that like macro level, you mentioned government. I mean, I think that is where, specifically physician kind of opinions and thought leadership is going to be so important to really kind of shape what ended up kind of being regulated around this, which I do honestly think that's important. I obviously don't want, regulation to stifle innovation. So I think having the physician and other clinician voice, at that level is going to be critical. Now, when you take like, companies, that are creating these products, and, again, I don't want to just isolate the generative AI boom, but like, obviously that's the thing that's around us right now. I think, those companies, big and small, that are developing those, And I think everyone knows the big ones that are doing this, like particularly like Microsoft Nuance, they've been in this space for a while, and I think they have obviously lots of physician voices that are kind of shaping their product as well as customers. But, I think there's a lot of smaller of these companies, that maybe have been around for a while too, but are creating really a very compelling product. And physicians can need to like help these companies. Some of them have employed physicians, but having physicians with different kind of backgrounds or different practices, the setup, the system they're in is, I think, critical to giving advice to these companies. And again, if you're interested in this, like I would definitely pursue it. Like you just said, this is going to be a part of medicine. And I always say, people always are afraid like, oh, AI is going to like replace a physician. I don't think AI is ever going to replace a physician, ever. However, if you don't use AI as being a physician, those physicians are going to replace you. So I think that's the key to this, is like everyone's going to adopt this at a different time and be comfortable with it, but start playing around with it now. I think that's the best thing. Like play around with it outside of medicine, help it like craft like an email that you're sending to a group of your friends, type out your ideas and then prompt it to, make a creative, funny story, about it. And I think as you start playing with it and realizing the power of it, I think most people, even the kind of the more laggard crew or the late adopters will see that value and come along with it.
So for the purest of the terms, as I understand, artificial intelligence is more like when it's like a dream, which is not a reality yet. And then you go into machine learning, and then that's when you have the real product. So what sort of dreams have you had on artificial intelligence that aren't created yet? And you say, you know what, I wish in this position that I am, that we had these 1, 2, or 3 tools that you've thought of that are not there yet. Maybe you're not planning really to do them, and you wish that somebody listened to this and then they took on that idea and made it a reality. Do you have any of those?
Yeah, I do. I mean, some of them may be a little more secretive, like something maybe I would want to create in the future, but no, I'm just kidding. I think what it is, it's funny because if I go back just like a few years, I used to share with my medical group at a conference we would put on for them, just to learn how to use the EMR better, that, I'm like, someday you're going to be able to just go from your exam room to exam room. You're not going to have to touch your computer. You're going to be able to just go in there, talk to your patient, about, their problem, but also just, the rapport and casual conversation you're going to have with them about their vacation. And then you're going to be able to like walk out of the room. And people were like, you're crazy. Like, that's never going to happen. And I mean, the reality is like, that's possible today. So that's kind of like, I would answer your question that way first. Like, I mean, this is not that long ago that we didn't even think what was possible today could be possible. Now, I think in the future, I think it's going to be that evolution of that. So, kind of like I made that comment that, AI won't replace physicians, but, the physicians who use it will replace them. So I see kind of this future where it's just going to be a huge multiplier for a physician. So like, say you're a primary care physician and you have a panel of, 2,000 patients, even if you're a private practice. I think, the future of this technology will allow you to take care of 10, maybe even like 100 times the panel that you currently take care of. And it's not because you're going to be able to like see all these people, but the technology is going to allow the patient to interact with it in a way. And they're going to be able to kind of like bounce ideas off the AI, which again will be based off of obviously sound medical knowledge, not as a substitute for a physician, but like for those very simple things that a physician isn't needed for, like totally needed for. But then it will be intelligent enough that those things that the physician does need to be aware of, will get filtered to them. And again, will they actually need to see the person? Probably not. Like it might just be a way of some other sort of communication between. But I just think, doing that as well as handling, just offloading all the administrative stuff that we do as a part of being a physician. I think that's going to be this future. And I honestly don't think it's going to be that far in the future. Like, again, if you asked me about 5 years ago, I would have said, yeah, hopefully I'll see this at the end of my career. Now I kind of think this honestly might be coming a lot sooner than we think.
That's amazing. Yeah, we wouldn't have never thought. Right now, I've had scribes for years, and fortunately, and unfortunately, like I'm all torn about the concept. I don't need one right now, and it's way quicker, and it's I do have a concierge practice, so I don't have to click on all these things that are required by insurance and all this stuff. So I have that advantage in that way, which is something that we would love to see for those practices that really are tied to clicking those buttons right now. So let's move from the future now to the present, and then think about these practices, not only the big, huge group that has all the support that you have right now in your practice. Let's think about those who are, in the trenches, the smaller practices, the people who don't have as much help and are now living in this era of artificial intelligence. From your point of view, if you were consulting somebody like that in a small office, which couple of things could you tell them? Hey, you can bring these things immediately today. Today's November 2023. And to your practice, and you will be able to immediately just take advantage and really make a change for your life and for your patient's life using artificial intelligence. What would you tell them?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I've thought about this a lot. Like I kind of alluded to it before, that there's like the big behemoths that are creating this technology. Someone in a private practice or even a solo practice, you're not going to, you could probably justify the cost, but that company's probably not going to consider even licensing you because it's too much work and effort for them to implement that for one user. Now, so those businesses, they're going after the enterprise customers, like big things like Kaiser and Mayo and those companies. However, there's a full spectrum of these out there. And, I don't have any specific affiliation with any of them, but, I'll mention two that I know of that actually allow you to kind of like subscribe on an individual basis, for a relatively inexpensive fee. And I'll just say it's much less expensive than a scribe. And I think one of those is a company called Sully.ai. They offer a Chrome extension, part of their platform. So, and you can subscribe as a physician of one. And that platform will allow you to start using the ambient technology to craft the note and do your documentation. So you don't have to type that out or dictate it. And then another company is that I think probably some of your listeners are aware of is Freed, Freed. And they offer kind of a similar thing where it's just a simple pricing for one, as little as one physician. And I think, so that's like, those are the types of companies today that as a clinician that's even maybe has a very kind of like optimized concierge practice where you don't have to do all those regulatory clicks and checks, you can still optimize the way you document and take care of patients. And I think those platforms are going to continue to mature. So you're going to get additional benefits out of them as they continue to improve their own platform.
Have you guys, I don't know, like Caster needs this necessarily as much as the solo practitioner might need it, in terms of like marketing and the terms of the way that they're bringing patients into the clinic. Have you guys discussed this in any way that would be translational to those practices?
Yeah. So you're getting at even like kind of just even like in a big system where you're trying to kind of market almost like these technologies as being, available
not marketing the technology itself, but using technologies to market your practice where you attract more patients. So have you guys discussed any of this in your meetings?
No, that's super interesting. I think, I feel like every day I'm starting to hear of like more and more use cases of kind of this type of large language model, generative AI type technologies. And, one area that I tend to try and listen to on LinkedIn quite a bit and read is kind of the marketing parts of it. And, again, like these technologies aren't going to replace those people, because I think those experts are still needed. But man, as a solo person, and I actually give credit to my buddy Dale Gold for this, but there's been many pendulums of things that have swung, in history. And I honestly do think that like this technology is going to swing a pendulum where the kind of private practitioner is going to actually, I think, continue to grow. And I think it's because there's going to be so many kind of tools in the tool chest for front office, back office, and then actual like taking care of patients, where it's going to use this types of technology to allow someone to be the best marketer of their practice, and automate some of that and in really creative kind of cool ways. And and then be able to obviously use that technology for scheduling and things, the stuff that you need for kind of operational pieces. But yeah, to your specific question, I haven't been a part of any specific conversations in my larger organization around that, but it's a very interesting question. Honestly, I'm probably going to ping some people next week, because I think there's ways that we could use that, even in a super large system.
Well, if you allow me a few minutes, let me tell you a little bit of how we're using it, because I think it's been fantastic. And this is not my work, it's the work we have in our team. He's my husband, and he's actually a data scientist and a project manager. And the way that, and he belongs to an AI mastermind, and we have our own mastermind and all these other things. But the way that he's been using this is that we first analyze one of the things when you have a business, and having a clinic is running a business, that there's no question about that. So we have, who's our target patient? Who would we be able to help the best with what we have? And we call that our avatar, right? And then our avatar, our potential patient and our current patient, they are going to be in different stages. They're going to be in the exploratory stage, when they're experiencing something that they need help for, and they don't know where to find that help. Then they're looking and they have found you. So then they're going to consider you as their potential clinician. And then after that, they're going to be comparing you to others. There's going to be different stages of that journey for that patient, so that they eventually become your patient. And then once they're your patients, like, how are you going to maintain them in ways that you can, improve their experience? So we have, through a series of exercises, we have honed down on our avatar, and then not only on that avatar that's going to be our perfect client, but their own stages where they're deciding through all these things, and then how to communicate with them in all those stages, in our clinic, in our website, in our social media, in our emailing, in all these things. So we are trying not to only communicate with one patient, we're trying to communicate with that patient at different stages of their own journey. So that we've been able to do. And
Very
that's
cool.
how we're deciding. So that's just one little thing that we're doing. And we've been able to do this with generative AI. And I find it fascinating, because it helps you really understand even you better as a physician, even you better about, what things you're good at and which type of people you're going to be really able to help. So it's been a wonderful thing. And I was just curious if you guys had done any exercises like that, but if you haven't, now you know how it can be used.
No, it's giving me so many ideas, though, just hearing that. But that's kind of, that's sort of what I was trying to explain, that future state. But again, like, this technology is coming fast and furious. And I think that future kind of state that I talked about earlier, in many ways, what you just described is technically already here too. So that's very cool. We always think of healthcare, whether it's a small clinic or a big macro system, you're still like, it's all about patient acquisition. You're trying to get people to come to the website, join. Systems like Kaiser also have insurance as a part of it, but like, it doesn't even need to be that. I think all health systems or practices want to keep that patient. And yeah, having tools on the front end, that the patient could interact with, like you said, like an avatar, and let them bounce questions off and kind of learn. That's super, super compelling.
Yeah. Well, I've had such a wonderful time with you right now, just learning about these things, especially with that huge system. I trained in Oregon, and I have a family member who you might know who's in your IT department. We'll talk about that later. So I know some about Kaiser Permanente, and it's serviced so many people when they need it, and in so many different ways. So it's been a wonderful entity for both, for their patients and for their physicians, because physicians tend to stay there for a very long time. They really like the systems, and as you say, it doesn't matter that you're in the position that you are, you still have to see patients. In your case, you're seeing 40% and through telemedicine, which I'm guessing you're using, the advantages also of artificial intelligence. So it's been a wonderful experience. Any particular words that you want to tell our listeners or physicians, that they have to think now in this era of artificial intelligence that we haven't discussed, as a tip or an idea or something for them to think of as we're ending our discussion here?
Yeah. I mean, I think I probably touched upon some of this, earlier, but I think the biggest thing right now, if you're hesitant to kind of like really kind of dive in to start using any of these technologies as a part of your clinical care, like just be curious about it and start playing with it. I think that's probably the best thing. I mean, like, for my daughter, I've shared this story before. She she had to create like a presentation of some influential women in history, and so she had a couple that she was going to do, and she did her little typical Google research for it. Well, we sat down with ChatGPT and we kind of like we just prompted it for a bunch of things, and we got a bunch of facts that we obviously had to do a little fact checking to make sure it wasn't hallucinating. But I think playing with that technology and then helping her kind of create this really cool presentation. And for the record, she did it all. I just kind of like explained a few things that she could do. She ended up making a poem about the person that wove in kind of the historical elements that they were famous for. So, I mean, a long-winded way of saying for, physicians out there that are listening, if you are hesitant with this technology and thinking you're scared about it, just start playing with it in like kind of those simple kind of personal ways, creative ways. Because I think once you start doing that, you're going to start seeing, wow, this like same technology could be used in healthcare, for me to answer a patient's inquiry, or as part of, you think of like generating instructions based off of what you've talked about. Like there's all these things that are going to augment the way we do. And then I think if you are interested and you're already at that kind of, adopter way of thinking, start looking for those companies that you can, subscribe to for as a month to month and try it. I mean, they're all HIPAA compliant. They're all vetted. So if you're interested in that, just do a trial. And I always explain, especially now, like you mentioned, you've had a scribe before. I mean, that's what essentially these products are right now. I mean, they are a very, very good scribe, and I think they're only going to get better, especially the ones that learn based on what you do. So it's kind of like your machine learning their system, so it starts adapting to the way you speak and the way you respond and the way you like to document. And I think so. Doing that and just exploring it, I think that's the best advice I would give.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for being here with us, spending the time with us. We're very honored to have you. And if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how should they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say two ways. I think connecting with me on LinkedIn, I'm fine with that. When people are trying to sell me something on LinkedIn, I don't connect. But when it's a clinician, specifically a physician, I will always connect and I'll respond. And if they, whatever, so they can always connect to me there. And then second, they can email me too. I mean, adam@nerdmds.com is a easy email. So people are welcome to reach out that way too.
And you guys go and visit nerdmd.com, right?
Yeah. We got a podcast too that we're just launching, and Dale and I, we blog about healthcare. topics. And I also blog about just technology topics and cool things. So yeah, you can take a look.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you then.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye. Well, guys, that's it for today. Hope that you learned some about how you can also get involved in this artificial intelligence way for physicians. If you want to learn more about Dr. Adam Carewe, you can visit him at his website, which is nerdmd.com. You can also find him, like I did, through LinkedIn. If you want to learn more about us, you can visit our website, maxallure.com, MAXALLURE, and don't forget to visit our YouTube channel called Max Allure Mastermind. Please share this with others. I hope that you have a great time. Give us 5 stars, and we'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.
Please remember that Design is not providing specific financial, medical, or career advice. Our only intent is to stimulate your appetite for growth by sharing our experience and those of our speakers, coaches, and guests. Your personal growth and success will be unique to your circumstances and your hard work. We sincerely hope you enjoyed the show and look forward to seeing you next week.